Hello and welcome to another episode of K-BOTAK, the podcast about Korean cinema and K-dramas. I'm John, and on this episode we'll be mixing up some Similac and heading to Uljin with Hirokazu Kore-eda's Cannes-awarded Broker. So on this episode, we'll be talking about Broker. This is a 2022 drama film directed by Hirokazu Kore-eda, his first Korean language feature. Broker is this director's return to the Cannes competition for the first time since winning the Palme d'Or for 2018's Shoplifters, a very good Japanese language movie. Broker got a 12-minute standing ovation at Cannes, beating The Incredible Thirst by Park Chan-wook for longest Cannes standing ovation for a Korean film, and it also won Song Kang Ho the Best Actor award. Hirokazu Kore-eda is a Japanese director known for heartfelt dramas about ordinary people. He often makes films about family, including Still Walking and Shoplifters, and has recently directed the courtroom thriller The Third Murder, and made his non-Japanese debut with French film The Truth, which is now followed up with this Korean film. I think Japanese directors working with Korean actors and settings is really fascinating, and would be interested to see more such collabs. Plenty of Korean directors have worked on English language films. Kim Ji-eun with The Last Stand, Bong Joon-ho with Okja and Snowpiercer, Park Chan-wook with Stoker. So what about a Korean director doing a Japanese or Indian film? There was The Medium, where Na Hong-jin wrote and produced for Banjong Pisantanakun. So I'm interested if there are more high-profile collaborations between Asian filmmaking talent, or if more will happen. I hope so. Anyway, I had been really looking forward to Broker. Shout out to people on Twitter, in particular one of my mutuals, Luna, for continuous updates about this film as it began making waves in Cannes for the festival, and the cast arrived to wow everyone there, particularly Kang Dong-won with his flamboyant and extremely memorable wardrobe choices. A word on spoilers for this movie. I won't be spoiling the plot, as it is a plot-heavy film, and I really think you should see it. I'll only talk about the premise and the back of the box setup, which is basically your first 20 minutes of the film or so. I was thinking about how best to cover this without spoilers, and I'm basically going to go over the setup, the characters, and some of my reaction to the movie, and some of the topics it deals with, to give you a feel for what you're getting yourself into, and how I responded to it, and some of the things it got me thinking about. And just because I think most people would like this if they give it a chance, so I hope you'll listen and that you'll be encouraged to go and see it whenever and in whatever form it is available in your country. And it is worth seeing in the cinema, by the way. So after a short break, as an excuse to play you more music from this movie, which has an incredible soundtrack, let's get into the film. this here in Singapore at a Golden Village cinema franchise on the 18th of June when there were some previews showing. It was a nice surprise, actually. I just happened to check on the Golden Village website, expecting to only see it the weekend following, and there were previews, some of which at some pretty wild times, starting at midnight and stuff like that. I'm a bit past going for midnight movies at this point, although I did seriously consider it. That's how excited I was for this film. I ended up going at a far more reasonable time for a matinee the following day. It's showing in quite a few Asian countries as of the time of recording. This is the 29th of June, and I'm hoping it gets a wider release and some further Best Film natter later in the year, as it certainly deserves it. The film is about a baby who is abandoned in something called a baby box. This is a temperature-controlled, safe container for babies who parents cannot look after, usually run by churches and charities. It is retrieved by a pair of guys who consider themselves goodwill brokers, sort of guardian angels in their view, who try to pair up unwanted babies with good parents for a fee. These guys, and by the way, they are taking the babies from the baby box under the nose of the church in this case. They aren't running a charity, and in fact the older guy, Sang-hyun, is in considerable financial trouble as the movie opens, which creates a bit of a ticking clock for how quickly he needs to move this baby onto some good parents. But the movie takes pains to show their goodies at the end of the day, and they help people adopt a baby when they can't otherwise, like they've helped a couple of gay guys to get a kid, for example. They want the baby to have a good home, and deserving would-be parents with no recourse to naturally and or legally have a baby to have the opportunity. Sang-hyun's younger counterpart Dong-soo volunteers at the church where the baby box is located and was himself abandoned as a baby. So one dark and rainy night, this very young woman arrives at the church, drops off the baby on the floor, not even the box, to be honest. As I discovered doing research after watching the film, that could be because if she puts it in the box, that will ring a bell that would bring the people outside from the church, and so she doesn't want to get any more attention than she already has doing this. She leaves a note promising to come back, and that's your irresistible hook for the start of the baby. We all love Tokyo Godfathers. Those of us that have seen it, we all want this baby to get home or to get to a home, and we're going to find out what happens. After Dong-soo and Sang-hyun pick up the baby and get it warmed up and fed, they plan to find it a home for its own good and for their financial benefit, and plan to head off for a rendezvous with an interested couple. Soo-young, however, the young woman, turns up again having had a change of heart in a very sad scene where you see her having to empty her breast milk down a public toilet, and goes with them to make sure the kid gets a good home. So a large part of the movie becomes a very bizarre road movie about a highly misfit group of people acting as a sort of family, again see Shoplifters, to escape notice and trying to sell on this precious little bundle. Meanwhile, two police detectives are trying to catch the group in the act of selling the baby, having been observing their operation. That's as much as I'll go into. That's just very early doors, your setup. The plotting of the movie is more intricate and faster paced in some ways than I expected. I thought that this really clipped along, and there's always a lot happening with the characters that kind of kept me glued to the screen. A big part of that is the cast, which is amazing, and some really good characters. So let's check out some of the characters, again without spoiling anything major. Firstly, Song Kang Ho as Sang-hyun. This is a beloved and much awarded actor. If a lot of people know an actor from South Korea, it might be Song Kang Ho or someone else in this movie, Bae Doona, or maybe Lee Byung-hun. He's come up on this podcast plenty before, and even prior to this Cannes festival has been no stranger to awards, both inside and outside of Korea. He's won awards for films like Parasite, A Taxi Driver, The Attorney, Age of Shadows. Those are all terrific, all worth watching, as is most stuff he does. The upcoming Emergency Declaration, for example, it looks like a very standard story about aeroplane-based peril, someone having a bomb or something on a plane. Seen lots of movies like that before, but I will watch it because Song Kang Ho is in it, as well as Lee Byung-hun and Kim Nam-gil. Recent episodes where I covered films with Song-in include the South Korean Creature features with The Host, and the Park Chan-wook Vengeance trilogy with Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. In fact, it's been a bit of a Song Kang Ho tribute recently on the podcast, which is no less than fitting. He is a living legend, and here he's at his best. Straight away, you get a big duality with Song's character in this. Both him and Kang Dong-won's character, Dong-soo, they're these two very kind-hearted and nice criminals who take abandoned babies and try to sell them. It sounds like something only a horrendous villain would do, but this story is about these two weird fairy godmother type dudes who try to broker goodwill in the world by bringing babies who need a home together with people who have been confounded by the natural and or legal route to bringing a baby into their home. So the performance here is really crucial to show you instantly that this isn't a bad guy. Song can be a very good guy. He can also be a really good bad guy or a conflicted person. Here he's immediately beaming, kindly, warm, and just a really nice uncle you want to sit with and listen to him telling you rambling stories. You get scenes of him knitting, fixing stuff around his laundromat, hanging clothes on the roof with the baby and the baby character. It paints a really good picture of who he is. Very soft-hearted, very gentle. He does also have a backstory in this film, and you get some quick snapshots of it, and it informs the decisions that he makes. But importantly, this isn't Sang-hyun's story, it is So-young's. It is even Dong-soo's story before it is Sang-hyun's. So, although Song Kang Ho is always this really commanding presence on screen, even if he's just kind of chilling and playing this very mild-mannered person, I think Kore-eda does a good job of letting the younger cast members, whose characters' lives are still ahead of them, get the limelight. And Song does get a chance here and there to have some really amazing moments, though, and some very funny moments as well. Well worth the award that he won at Cannes. Bae Doona is Sujin, which is one of the two police detectives that is on the trail of the baby brokers. Bae Doona is internationally loved and rightly renowned, one of the other people that international audiences would probably be familiar with. She's known for Wachowski sisters films like Cloud Atlas and Jupiter Ascending, crossover Netflix hits in English and Korean, so Sense8, also by the Wachowskis, and Kingdom. She is a mainstay in Korean cinema from the aforementioned Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance and The Host, where she actually starred alongside Song Kang Ho, and also the lead in Next Sohee, which was also at Cannes this year, where she also plays a detective, and is another film I'm looking forward to catching. Bae, as an actor, can do a lot with a little, and she spends much of this film sat in a car eating junk food and impatiently staking out the main characters. But she's very humorous and has a lot of pathos in this quite constrained role. As you can imagine, she's acting with her face most of the time and with her tone of voice. At one point, she even gets a chance to show how she can do more with her silhouette than a lot of people can when they're fully on screen. And I think that it's really kind of a testament to what she can bring to the table, how much she's able to convey of this police detective, and the journey that she goes on throughout the movie, which again I'm not going to spoil, but major changes of heart that she has, and the way she struggles to understand some of the characters that at one point she's seeing as criminals or unsympathetic. And also a lot of her humorous moments are helped by her banter with the other detective, Detective Lee, played by Lee Joo-young, who was in Weightlifting Fairy Kim Bok-chu and Itaewon Class. It's all very good. They both get some lovely moments in this, and total highlights. So, Kang Dong-won as Dong-soo. This is Sang-hyun's colleague in the baby broker business that they operate, And he's this big friendly guy who is generally affable, gets along with most people. But as the film goes on, again, no specific spoilers, but just generally, you find out more about his backstory. What I'll say is quite sad, but he also just happens to be the solid, reliable rock in the middle of this weird little family that snowballs together. I have to say, I am becoming a big fan of Kang Dong-won. He was apparently famous for his role as a character called Sad Eyes in this 2005 film The Duelist, but I haven't been able to find somewhere to watch it. He definitely has very sad eyes, which he can turn on and off. I think he's a brilliant actor. I've seen him in The Priests, where he's a deacon wrestling with his inner demons as he tries to exorcise an actual demon that's living in Park Chan-wook, in an astonishing early performance from her. Master, where he's embroiled in an embezzlement case with a devious and blonde-haired Lee Byung-hun. Peninsula, the sequel to Train to Busan, he was the best thing about that film. And Ilang from Kim Ji-woon, which apparently I am the only person to like. But that also stars Han Hyo-joo if you've recently enjoyed Happiness, that zombie K-drama. As well as Kundo, Age of the Rampant, a great martial arts epic with some fabulous music on its soundtrack. With this role, Kang Dong-won really proves that he could take on the baton of the kind of roles Song Kang Ho has been associated with. These everyman, big bro roles that nonetheless have tons of depth. He's really warm, really affable, while still showing how much he's going through at different points in the film. He acts really well alongside some of the kid performers that begin to crop up partway in, and has an amazing dynamic with IU as So-young. For me, he was the real star of it. I loved his performance. It was really understated. It felt like him coming into his own at the same time. I would love to see him in less wobbly zombie sequels, as much as I watch all of those that come out, and more full-on dramatic roles, as I just think he's capable of so much. He's a brilliant actor, and this Broker might be one of the movies people tell you to watch in 5 years when he gets Best Actor at Cannes and becomes a global sensation. He did get loads of Best Actor awards for Secret Reunion, where he's also alongside Song Kang Ho, so I feel I will have to go and watch that soon. Absolute highlight of this film, but across the board, the cast is astonishingly good, which is why I'm spending so much time talking about what they bring to the film. This is a really good film if you just want to kind of rock up and see some of the best in the business do what they do. Then you will get a lot out of Broker, as well as the fact it has an amazing story, a big message. Speaking of which, coming finally to Lee Ji-yoon, better known as IU, as So-young. I love the fact this character is literally called So-young, as she's playing this very young mother, a kid herself, which is kind of part of the movie's message. IU plays this other abandoned kid who has ended up pregnant herself, down the line, and felt deep down that she didn't know how to care for this child. And in basically youthful ignorance has almost tried to kind of bank the baby with the church until she can return with better circumstances for it. That's the way it initially appears, anyway. All I knew about IU going in was that she is a K-pop star, a really popular one. Didn't know much else. Kore-eda cast her because he got into K-drama during lockdown. Hilariously, he's got that in common with a lot of people. And he happened to watch My Mister, where IU stars alongside Lee Sang-hyun, a favourite of mine. I already wanted to go back to that and check it out because of Lee Sang-hyun. Now I have to, because IU in this movie is phenomenal. Really fragile, really haunted, but never less than a commanding presence on screen. She embodies how much pain and confusion she's going through while never letting anyone take her dignity away. Absolutely shines on screen, and this is alongside the likes of Song Kang Ho and Doona Bae. She's up against the best of the best here, and really just absolutely nailing these scenes and these kind of line deliveries that she has that really hit hard. Fantastic performance. There's also a lot to say about what IU and her actions, or her character's actions, represent in the story as relates to baby boxes in Korea and in general. So after some more music, let's take a look. Asia, it says, quote, over 100,000 Korean babies have been abandoned due to social stigmas, born to single mothers, born with disabilities. Baby Box is a facility with the mission to prevent the death of abandoned babies. So in 2009, a pastor named Lee Chong-rak created Baby Box. He had found a baby with his wife at their Chusarang Community Church doorstep in winter. Apparently, they heard a phone call in the middle of the night at about 3:20 in the morning, rushed outside, saw a cat jump out of a box that had been left on the doorstep, and the pastor, Lee, reaches in and pulls out this very cold little baby, and he said that the baby died when he held it to his chest. Really heartbreaking, and clearly had a huge effect on him as well, because he and his wife founded Baby Box to try and save babies in this situation. The Baby Box is a temperature-controlled, tiny cubicle, and according to Give Asia, 1,600 babies have been saved from unsafe abandonment because of this. And recently, Baby Box as a charity also provides monthly services to parents and economic support to help them get back on their feet and reunited with their babies. It runs on donations, and there will be a link to Baby Box in the show notes if you feel that this is something you want to donate to. Now, for the first few years, Pastor Lee was repeatedly asked by the government to remove this Baby Box, and this initiative was looked at very suspiciously in the media, especially Western media, from what I read, with the feeling being that Pastor E was basically making it easier for parents to abandon their children. And if you want an example of English language media bias and how Western media reports on European countries versus Asian countries, you can have a look at how articles on Korea's Baby Box system are worded compared to those on the Czech Baby Box system. Would it surprise you to know that a European system doing essentially the same thing garners a far kinder tone from Western media? Anyway, the pastor's response to this was that he was getting babies left at his front gate anyway, and felt remiss not providing at least a basic installation to keep them warm and safe until he could find them. These babies are often being left still covered in the blood from childbirth or with umbilical cords attached. Korea Bizwire said, Lee has refused to install security cameras and regularly wipes away fingerprints left on the box to keep the parents from being caught and punished. But that does not mean the pastor accepts babies without qualms. The opening of the hatch door triggers a bell inside the church. The pastor or a staff member then rushes out to chase the parents and attempt to dissuade them from leaving their child behind. Some 95% of those had at least brief talks with me, and around 17 parents ended up changing their minds, he said. The church takes care of babies for up to 6 months. Single mums who decide to rear their own child can receive various forms of support, including financial subsidies and counselling services. End quote. The problem is that in South Korea, this is what I read, the government policy requiring parents to register babies under their own names is, if they want them to be adopted, can cause problems for single mothers, as having a baby out of wedlock is considered a sin, and in addition to that, many of these pregnancies are the result of sexual violence. So these women have absolutely nowhere to turn. They are treated by both legality, the way society treats women, and by male violence. These are single mothers who are often marginalised anyway in society, left with few options. So it's easy to slate this pastor for making it easy to abandon a kid, apparently. It's harder to create policy that will allow young mothers to keep their head above water and be able to provide the necessary care and the many expenses of child rearing. Child rearing, in case you did not know, is incredibly expensive, intimidatingly expensive, especially in these late capitalist aging population countries where millennials and zoomers have little savings and often live month to month. A lot of people are hanging on by a thread. Really, this is all more about the mothers. It's easy to blame them. They're very unfortunate, and you say to them, how could you abandon your child? But I think it takes a very cold person to say that without reflecting what an awful decision that is to make. To opt to break your own heart by leaving this tiny person that you are meant to dedicate your remaining life to, who is meant to bury you one day, somewhere where you can no longer be with them and protect them. You have to, in good faith, assume that the alternative is hardly cushy. They're not doing this lightly. Ultimately, you solve this problem by supporting young women, by having pro-woman, pro-young person policy. And those are rare things in many countries. So at the very least, these young mothers deserve empathy and respect, not suspicion. And until such a time, at least, this is an idea that has saved some little ones from freezing to death, which is the worst possible outcome for anyone. Not telling you how to think about baby box, I am maybe suggesting that if your first gut reaction is to treat the mothers with suspicion or even to be callous towards them, maybe ask yourself why you do not first go for some kind of good faith response and think, what could have put this girl in this situation? You know, what could have happened to her that she's having to do this? And this is what Kore-eda is trying to achieve with this film. He was interviewed by Deadline, and he said, quote, "The baby box is an ongoing thing in Japan and Korea. Public opinion hasn't really decided if it's a good or bad thing. I believe this is a very controversial topic, and it deserves careful thought in any event. I wanted to view things like the majority of people. A lot of people have preconceived ideas of women who give up their children. Hence the detective who represents public opinion at the onset of the film. The first line is that she shouldn't have given birth if she intended to give up the baby and abandon it." He goes on later to say, "The characters have committed major crimes, but there's a drive for once in their life to do something good." This is why having such a brilliant performance by IU is key, because this film is all about her journey and the circumstances and the injustices in society that put her character of So-young in this position. Why this cycle repeats itself, why we have characters who are abandoned as babies, abandoning more babies and trying to rehome other abandoned babies. So go and see this movie, and I think it will really get that message across to you. And hopefully, for some people, it will make them think a little bit differently when they consider the mothers who are put in this situation. I thought that, honestly, this was a film that can make you look at everyone around you, whether it's your partner, your mum, your dad, your friends, and especially your children if you have them, and realise they were once a tiny baby, depending on the nurturing care of another. Most of the time that's a parent. Sometimes it's Song Kang Ho in a pair of old socks that he's darned himself on the way to try and get himself out of debt by selling you to a couple of kind gay dudes who can't adopt you legally because the laws are unfair and cruel. So a meaty film in terms of theme, in terms of what it's talking about. Brilliantly performed, gorgeously shot and put together. Apart from that, really great music and vibe. I have been using every excuse to chuck music from the soundtrack into this. This soundtrack actually comes from Jung Chae-il, who did the soundtrack for the Oscar-winning Parasite, for the Netflix phenomenon Squid Game. He gets his name attached to a lot of big projects, this guy. And I think that This particular suite of music that he's put together is quite easily the best that he's done. I did like that big Baroque piece in the middle of Parasite. Squid Game had some good little jingles that worked well with the tension in that show. This is something I haven't heard from him before. Really beautiful guitars and strings. I've even warmed to some of the plinky plonky piano that accompanies the film. I've been listening to it quite a lot. It's all on Spotify. Really lovely. Up to you if you want to listen to it before you see the film, but I think certainly after I came out wanting to revisit it. Lovely, lovely stuff. So, that's Broker. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on your podcast app of choice, and if you wouldn't mind, leave a 5-star review. It genuinely helps. There are lots of other episodes of K-BOTAK you can check out. Recently for Park Chan-wook's Vengeance trilogy, a double bill of South Korean creature features, and the week before that, the brilliant drama Mr. Sunshine. Coming soon, episodes on brand new Korean content like Money Heist Korea, Joint Economic Area, The Witch Part 2, The Other One, Monstrous, and the another Cannes-winning film, Decision to Leave. You can follow the show on @K-BOTAKpod, that's @KBOTAKpod on Twitter and Instagram. Retweets and shares are much appreciated, and best of all, if you like the show, please subscribe and leave a review. Thanks for listening. And until next time, follow the dot.